Pull back the leaves on that tomato plant and look closely. Cluster after cluster of green fruit, sitting there, refusing to turn red. You've watered on schedule. You've fed them. You've done everything the way you were told to. And still, nothing. If that sounds familiar, stick with me, because there are 5 mistakes causing this, and most gardeners only ever fix 1 or 2 of them. The last one on this list is the mistake almost nobody suspects, and it might be the exact reason your harvest is stuck right now. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1 is exposing your tomatoes to too much summer heat. It sounds backwards, since tomatoes are a full sun crop, and more sun should mean faster ripening. But once daytime temperatures climb above about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, something changes inside the fruit. Tomatoes turn red because they produce 2 natural pigments called lycopene and carotene, but production of those pigments slows dramatically in extreme heat, leaving the fruit green until temperatures cool down again. The plant isn't struggling, and the fruit isn't dying. It simply paused, sitting in what's called the mature green stage, waiting for cooler conditions before it can continue. If you garden in zone 8 through 10, this heat pause can stretch on for weeks at a time during peak summer. If you're in zone 5 through 7, even a short heat wave can cause the same stall for several days. The fix goes further than just waiting it out. Install shade cloth rated for 30 to 40% block on the west side of your plants, since afternoon sun is what pushes temperatures past that threshold in the first place. Mulch heavily around the base of the plant too, since cooler roots help the entire plant handle heat stress above ground. Water deeply in the morning rather than the afternoon, so the plant goes into the hottest part of the day, already hydrated instead of stressed. And if a prolonged heat wave is in the forecast, pick any fruit that's already reached full size and bring it indoors to finish ripening in a paper bag on the counter, usually within about 5 days. One more thing. Don't refrigerate green tomatoes. Cold temperatures interfere with the ripening process and can reduce their flavor, so leave them at room temperature until they fully ripen. And if you want fruit to ripen even faster once it's indoors, add a ripe banana or apple to that paper bag. Both release extra ethylene gas alongside the tomato's own, and that extra push can shave a full day or 2 off the wait. Before we move to mistake number 2, tell me your state and USDA zone in the comments. I'd love to see where everyone in the Plantoria gardening community is growing from. Mistake number 2 is overwatering during the exact stage when your plant needs to be ripening fruit. It feels logical. Your tomatoes aren't turning red, so you assume they need more water, and you start watering every single day, sometimes even twice a day. But waterlogged soil actually works against you here. It pushes oxygen out of the soil around the roots, and a stressed root system means a stressed plant, which slows ripening down even further instead of speeding it up. Constant moisture also raises your risk of root disease and can cause the fruit itself to crack right as it starts to turn color. The fix is watering deeply, but far less often. Let the top inch or 2 of soil dry out slightly before you water again, adjusting for your soil type and however hot the week has been. Sandy soil will need water more often than heavy clay, so pay attention to what's actually happening in your own garden bed rather than following a fixed schedule. Mulch again here too, since it helps keep soil moisture even between waterings instead of swinging between soaked and bone dry. A simple way to check before you reach for the hose is to push a finger a couple inches into the soil near the base of the plant. If it still feels cool and damp down there, hold off another day, even if the surface looks dry. If you've been watering out of worry rather than watching the soil, this one mistake alone might be the reason your tomatoes have stalled. If this is helping you figure out what's actually going wrong out there, subscribe now for more practical updates like this every week. Mistake number 3 is feeding your plant too much nitrogen. Take a step back and really look at your tomato patch. Is it thick with leaves? Dark green, almost jungle-like, but with very few flowers? That's a strong sign of nitrogen overload. Here's why that actually stops ripening, and not just fruiting. Nitrogen is exactly what a young plant needs early in the season, since it builds strong stems and healthy foliage. But once your plant reaches flowering and fruiting, the plant only has so much energy to distribute, and it always follows the strongest signal. High nitrogen tells the plant to keep pushing out new leaves and stems, so that energy gets pulled away from the fruit that's already forming, including the sugars and pigment production it needs to actually turn red. That's why a plant can look lush and healthy. While its tomatoes sit green on the vine for weeks, the plant isn't struggling. It's simply investing everywhere except the fruit. A simple soil test will tell you exactly where your levels stand, and most garden centers can run one for you in a few days if you don't want to test it yourself. If nitrogen is high, switch to a fertilizer that favors phosphorus and potassium instead, since those two nutrients push the plant toward flowering and fruit development rather than leaf growth. Look for a fertilizer labeled something close to 5-10-10, since that lower first number means less nitrogen going into the soil. Apply it every 2 to 3 weeks once flowering starts, and stop feeding nitrogen-heavy fertilizer completely once fruit begins to set. If you're gardening in raised beds or containers, keep in mind that fresh compost added mid-season can carry a surprising amount of nitrogen with it, so even a well-meaning top dressing can quietly undo the switch you just made. Mistake number 4 is letting your tomato plant grow too much dense foliage. This is especially common with indeterminate varieties, the kind that keep growing taller and producing new stems all season long instead of stopping at a set height. Left alone, these plants can turn into a wall of leaves. That thick canopy reduces airflow, traps humidity, and creates cooler, shadier conditions around the fruit, which can slow ripening while increasing the risk of fungal disease. The fix here is pruning, and I know this is one of the more argued about topics in home gardening, so I'll say it plainly. If you want more fruit, and you want that fruit to ripen faster, you need fewer leaves. Start with a clean pair of pruning shears, since dirty blades can spread disease from one plant to another. Remove any foliage below your lowest fruit cluster first, then step back and look at the center of the plant. Thin out growth that's crossing over itself, or shading fruit that's trying to ripen. If you're growing indeterminate varieties, pinch off suckers as they appear, the small shoots that grow in the joint between the main stem and a branch, since those turn into entire extra stems if left alone. Determinate varieties need far less of this, since they naturally stop growing at a set size. Just don't remove more than about a third of the plant's total foliage in one sitting, since taking too much at once stresses the plant instead of helping it. Morning is the best time to prune too, since cuts made in cooler, drier conditions heal faster and are less likely to invite disease than cuts made in the heat of the afternoon. Tell me down in the comments, are you a hard pruner, or do you leave your plants alone? I have a feeling this one's gonna split the room. The last mistake is the one most gardeners never think about, because it happens long before the first tomato ever appears. Mistake number 5 is choosing the wrong variety for how long your season actually lasts. This mistake happens before you even plant, and it's the reason so many gardeners blame themselves for something that was decided months earlier. Some tomato varieties need 90 to 100 days or more, from transplant to maturity. If your growing season is shorter, frost can arrive before fruit like that ever gets the chance to ripen, no matter what you do right in between. Early season varieties that mature in 60 to 70 days exist for exactly this reason, and if your season runs short, choosing one of these isn't a shortcut. It's a requirement. Check the days to maturity on the seed packet or plant tag before you buy, and count backward from your area's average first frost date to see if that variety actually has time to finish. This is why 2 gardeners can do everything else exactly the same, and one is harvesting red tomatoes in August, while the other is still staring at green ones in October. It was never about effort. It was about matching the variety to the season from the very beginning. But if you're already in this exact situation, and autumn is closing in, don't give up yet. There's one aggressive, last resort move that can force a stubborn plant to hurry up. About 4 weeks before your expected first frost, top the plant. Snip off the main growing tip, along with any new flowers trying to form. Those flowers won't have time to become tomatoes anyway, and removing them signals the plant to stop growing completely. All its remaining energy gets redirected away from new leaves and flowers, straight into ripening the green fruit already on the vine. It's not something you do earlier in the season, but late in the year, with frost coming, it might be exactly what pushes your harvest across the finish line. So keep an eye on the heat and get shade cloth up before temperatures climb too high. Water with intention instead of out of worry. Watch your nitrogen and switch to a bloom-focused fertilizer once flowering starts. Get comfortable pruning, even if it feels aggressive at first. And if frost is closing in on a season that ran too long, don't be afraid to top that plant and force the last of your harvest home. If you found this helpful, subscribe for more practical gardening tips that actually work. Every week, we share simple, research-backed techniques to help you grow healthier plants and bigger harvests. And if you've dealt with tomatoes that just wouldn't ripen, tell us what finally worked for you in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what another gardener needs to hear. Traditional techniques, real results, no hype. See you in the next one.